My name is Jihan, and I'm working on Arcos Eden, which is another Sahana Eden project, much like, God, I'm forgetting his name. Oh, I forgot now. The other guy in Arcos that's doing Sahana. So, to begin with, I herniated a disc in my back this semester. That didn't really go very well. I missed lots of class, and this project kind of got thrown to the wayside. As a result, I've talked to Professor Morthy, and I'm working on the bulk of this project over winter break and finishing it then. And I'll be ready for the poster session in January. As a recap of what I've gone over before, Sahana Eden is a humanitarian, free, and open source software project. It's a disaster management system. The developers have expressed interest in moving in other kinds of humanitarian work, not just disaster management, and that's kind of where my project comes in. Mine is going to be an extension of their platform, introducing a number of new modules that are targeted to be business management tools for fair trade enterprises. So, kind of the workflow that I'm designing for right now is one that was communicated to me through 10,000 Villages, which is a very large fair trade organization. It was one of the founding members of the Fair Trade Federation back in, I think the 1970s, so they've been around for a while. Basically, the way their workflow goes is that they seek out groups that work with artisans in the third world generally. I mean, they do some work, I think, in the United States, but it's mostly in the developing world. They seek either unemployed or underemployed artisans, and there's kind of a collaborative effort to develop products that will both showcase their artisanal abilities and then also actually be something marketable to developed countries as, a variety of different products. 10,000 Villages in particular sells everything from home goods to decorations to clothing to toiletries. The reason I chose them was because after emailing 15 plus different organizations, 10,000 Villages were the only one to get back to me with any sort of real response. It's really difficult to communicate to these people the purpose of open source software. A lot of them are kind of suspicious. They think you're trying to sell them something, and it's been kind of difficult. But 10,000 Villages is yet again very large, and they're pretty exemplary of successful fair trade work. Why not them? Right now I'm working with their workflow to kind of design use cases for that, but realistically, because they're such a big organization, I doubt that they're going to want to use a kind of lower level beta of a software solution. So I'm going to try to get some smaller organizations perhaps to test it out, kind of in the way that Sahana is already working. They currently have a group using their disaster management system in Pakistan for the flood response, and I know that there's talks going on right now to implement it somewhere in Southeast Asia. I think they were talking about Thailand. So, just as a note, the development community is pretty prolific. They're located all over the world, and a bunch of them are in Great Britain, and then some of them are in Vietnam and Thailand. So, and a lot of them have different links to various humanitarian organizations. So, using the mailing list has been pretty useful for me. As for the actual software features, the one I'm working on right now is artisan management. If you were to go to Sahana Eden right now, you would see something called volunteer management, and it's in part based off of that module, but it's not precisely based off of it because they don't offer a lot of this kind of content that would be useful for this kind of thing. They also offer a lot of content that wouldn't be necessary at all. So. Also, order management, it kind of speaks for itself. One thing that I wanted to focus on, which was not currently anything implemented in Sahana Eden, was various design collaboration tools. When I spoke with a representative from 10,000 Villages, I kind of got the impression that the way they design products is sort of shooting emails back and forth, and some phone calls here and there, and it doesn't really seem to be the most efficient or best way to do things. So, perhaps people that also work with that kind of paradigm might benefit from these kinds of tools. And also supply chain management, because some of these organizations will work with sort of distributed networks of villagers and artisans in places like India. And I know there's one organization in India that works in something like 100 different villages, and they're really distributed. So it's not just a matter of telling them what to make, but to get them the materials so they can make the things that you want to the quality standard that you would like to see. As for a schedule, obviously the preliminary research was done before my first presentation, so that should not come as a surprise. I'm still talking to different organizations. I'm hoping that with more time during the day, I have difficulty having time in the day during working hours to give people calls, and now that the semester's over, that should be a lot easier. I'm going to continue working on the modules and put together some design documentation that I've been working on and actually upload it. I intend on having some sort of a workable release by the end of winter break, which is me making up all of the work that I didn't get to this semester. And farther into the future, I'd like to see some mobile capabilities. I know that a lot of the developers in Sahana Eden right now are particularly fond of mobile capabilities, and they're very useful for some of the things that they do. So I would suspect that this is something that would the head designers would probably like to see implemented. Just thanks to, of course, Professor Morty for being understanding about my health situation, Shauna Sullivan for making this all possible. I'm very surprised that the Sahana Eden developers never get tired of people asking sometimes the dumbest of questions on their IRC channel. And that I invite everyone to continue to check the fall 2010 dashboard over the winter break, because I will be updating it. I'm sure other people will as well, but I would appreciate any feedback that anyone has. So that's it.
Jihan, so you are proposing to develop 3 modules, is that correct? If you go back to the slide,
Yeah.
that is the trade, go back 3 slides back. Yeah. So that no more. Yeah. No, you go further. Yeah. This one. So artisan management, order management, and supply chain management. These are the 3 modules.
Yeah.
Okay. So one possibility is first thing you could do is, this is just a suggestion. You can write a design spec, but that will be a good idea.
I have a functional spec that I had been working on, but it wasn't at a point that I was going to publish it. So
What underlying database that you are using, you are going to leverage as much as possible from the original Sahana Eden,
yeah.
right?
It's big. I'm literally, when I spoke to the developers, I wasn't sure how they'd like me to pursue this kind of route, whether or not I'd be branching the project permanently or leaving it in there. And I spoke to Fran Boone, who's kind of like the head developer. He's a guy who works at Oxfam, and he just wanted me to put the modules right in there and upload them. So it's going to be modules that are available from their active code base that they work from. And once I get to a point of release, I can add in the configurations that you could, turn it on for this, or you could, also deploy it for a different purpose. But it would all be in one sort of setup.
So you must be pretty far along if you expect to have a release in 2 weeks, right? I didn't hear any.
Oh, no, at the end of winter break, so this would be in January.
At the end of winter break.
Break
Six
is like
weeks.
almost
Six
all
weeks.
right.
Middle of January.
Yeah, that's
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Gotcha.
And it's going to be my only commitment over the break, so I have a lot of time to work on it.
Great.
And so you were, like these 3 modules sort of, like you said, for at least the 10,000 villages, they work with organizations that then work with the artisans.
Some of them are directly like artisan groups, like organized cooperatives, but then a lot of them are more like sort of nonprofit groups that organize these people.
And so, but it looks like these are kind of targeting the between 10,000 villages and those groups.
Yeah, I do mention, I think somewhere earlier in the presentation, that the target is on medium and small scale, medium and larger scale organizations, because the small scale organizations don't really have a lot of use for this kind of tools. There are a lot of them out there. Women of the Cloud Forest was one that I had mentioned in a previous presentation, but they work with maybe 12 women, and there's 3 full staff member administrators, and they don't really, it'd be hard to sell this kind of thing to them when they don't necessarily have a computer, and I don't know what kind of benefit a small organization might stand for something like this. Whereas something like 10,000 villages, there are many organizations in between, but something of a larger scale would, of course, have a lot more benefit to something like this, where they can organize distributed manufacture and that kind of thing. Oh, and to elaborate on your comment, some of this functionality is already implemented in Sahana, so it's not as if I have to do every single element. For example, Gantt charts aren't in there. That'd be something I would have to put in. But there's a lot of functionality that I can leverage from already existing modules. So it's not as much original code as it might look like.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you.